Hey everyone, and welcome back to our channel. Today, we're going to be talking about CSS fonts. The font is really important. You have to choose the right font, so it has impact on how the reader experiences a website. The right font can create a strong identity for your brand. Choosing a font that is easy to read is important. It's also important to choose a good color and size for your font. The CSS font family properties specify the font for an element. The font family property should hold several font names as a fallback system. If the browser does not support the first font, it will try with the next font. The font's name should be separated with a comma. Always start with the font you want, and always end with the generic family, so the browser will pick a similar font in the generic family if no other fonts are available. Right? If the font name is more than one word, it must be in quotation marks like this. You can see over here that we're using Times New Roman and it has a space in between them. To the fonts that has a space between them, you have to use the double quotation marks. To the fonts that don't have a space between them, you can simply use them without any quotation marks like we used here. And also, they told us to add a second font as well as a third font as a backup. So if this font is failed in that working browser, it will try this font, or else this font. Let's try to see how these fonts look. You can see over here that all of these fonts are supported by this browser. So this is a paragraph, it's shown in the Times New Roman font. This is a paragraph, it's shown in Arial font. And this paragraph is shown in Lucida console. Let's go further and let's see this one. Generic font families. In CSS, there are 5 generic font families. One is a serif font, sans serif font, monospace font, cursive font, fantasy font. The serif font have a very small stroke at the edges of each letter, and they create a sense of formality and elegance. You can see over here the serif font, they have a very small stroke at the edge of each letter. You can see the strokes over here. Sans serif fonts. Sans serif fonts have no small strokes attached to them. They create a modern and minimalistic look. You can see over here. And you can see the difference that sans serif fonts create that sans serif don't have. Monospace fonts. Here, all the letters have the same fixed width. They create a mechanical look. Cursive fonts. They imitate a human handwriting. Fantasy fonts, these are decorative or playful fonts. On a computer screen, you can see that sans serif fonts are very easier to read than serif fonts. This is what serif fonts. These are the font names, these are the generic font family. In this example, you can note that whether this paragraph is easier to read or this one. I hope many will tell this one. This is a sans serif font. Next one, this one is a monospace family. You can see that after we mention a font name, we usually end it with their generic family name so that even if the browser doesn't support any of these, you try to choose the family, any kind of fonts that support this family. Sans serif, like Arial, Radana, Helvetica. Monospace is Corel New, Lucida Console, Monaco. Cursive is this brush script, Lucida handwriting, copperplate Papyrus. And remember that font families and fonts are really important when you're making your website. It's what makes a website readable and look very beautiful. Even though there are a lot of other factors also that influence your website, the look of your website, fonts play a huge role. Even though colors play a huge role, Fonts are equally important when you consider styling your website. The fonts that you use in your website should be the same fonts throughout, making readability easier and to have a personal attachment to the website the user is reading. Web-safe fonts. Web-safe fonts are fonts that are universally installed across all the browser and web devices. However, there are 100% no completely web-safe fonts. There's always a chance that a font is not found or is not installed properly. This means that if a browser doesn't have that font or it's not installed over there, the fonts will not be shown for the user and they will have a different font shown by the browser default setting. This means you should have a lot of couple of list of similar backup fonts in the font family property if you want that specific type of font to be shown in the website. Some CSS styles make some fonts look legit. What do I say? So they don't really make it look that appealing to the user, or makes it sometimes very difficult for them to read. Sometimes it may come out of the wordings. For example, let's say that you used some specific fonts for a specific family of fonts. And if that browser doesn't have that font, it'll try to use some other fonts that are already installed it or default font settings. And that might not be the output that you really want your user to see. Here we have three fonts: Tahoma, Verdana, Sans Serif. The second and the third font are the backup font, in case if the first one is not found, and usually you ended up with a generic family name. Web-safe fonts. This following list are the best web-safe fonts that means almost all of the websites or web pages or browsers have this font already installed in them. Arial, Vadana, Tahoma, Tribuche, Times New Roman, Georgia, Goramon, Courier New, Prescript Empty. Some of the names I might not be pronouncing correct. I'm really sorry for that. And also remember that you have to, before publishing the website, you have to check how the fonts appear and devices, and always you should use a fallback font. Arial is the most widely used font for both online and printed media. Arial is also the default font in Google Docs. Arial is one of the most safest web fonts and it's available on all major operating systems. Verdana. Verdana is also a very popular font and it's easily readable even for small font sizes. You can see over here in these examples, they have given how this text looks in these. They have given how numbers appear and how small the text look. The Hema. The Hema font has a very less space between the characters. You can see that very clearly over here. Trebuchet MS was designed by Microsoft in 1996, but we have to use this font very carefully because some of the mobile phones operating system does not support this. Times New Roman is also one of the most recognizable fonts. It looks very professional and is used in many newspapers and news websites. It's also the primary font for Windows device and applications. Georgia. Georgia is an elegant serif font that it's very readable at different font sizes, so it's a good candidate for mobile responsive design. Goramont. Goramont is a classical font used for many printed books. It has a timeless look and good readability. And while seeing these fonts, you can actually relate to it really well because you go to a lot of websites, you see these type of fonts, and they just get registered in your mind. Like these fonts, they look like actually like a book font. Courier New Monospace. Courier New is the most widely used monospace serif font. Courier New is often used with coding displays, and many email providers use it as the default font. Courier New is also the standard font for movie screenplays. Prescript MT. The Prescript MT font was designed to mimic handwriting. It is elegant and sophisticated but can be hard to use. You can also check out all the available fonts in these Google Fonts. And you can see how to use one of the other fonts also is called Poppins. Poppins also is one of the most famously used um, font, and if you have it in your browser, then you're good to go. So this is a Lorem Ipsum, and I do see that they don't have much space between them. Um, and I just saw that, okay, this is Times New Roman. Yeah. Let's go for font fallbacks. Font fallbacks below. Commonly used font fallbacks organized by the five generic font families: serif, sans serif, monospace, cursive, and fantasy. You can see over here, this is a font family. These are the font families, how they look. Sans serif fonts. You can check out these websites and try all of these fonts. And while we're trying to create our own website, I hope you'll make something really good with these fonts. Next, I'm going to talk about font style. Font style property specifies the font style for text. Font style: normal, italic, and oblique. Oblique is also very similar to italic look. Let's have a look and see how they look. You can see over here, this is the first style, over here the default one. I'm so sorry, the normal style. Next one is italic. This is a paragraph in the italic style, and this one is the oblique style. The one thing that you can notice here for the difference is this is more slant towards than this one. Like than italic, you can see that it goes more slant. You can see the difference pretty good in style. CSS font weight. Font weight property specifies how thick or thin in text should be displayed. This property can have one of the following values: normal, this is default; bold, define thick characters; bolder, define thicker characters; lighter, define lighter characters; defines from thin to thick characters. 400 is the same as normal and 700 is same as bold. So when I say bold, it means the value is 700. When I say normal, it's 400. You can see over here the difference. The font weight 900, bold, lighter, normal. Let's change these values and play around a bit. 400. Let's have this one to be 700 or 738 or some values. You can see over here, the higher the value, the bolder it looks. Font variant. Font variant property specifies whether or not a text should be displayed in a small caps font. In a small caps font, all your lowercase letters are converted to an uppercase letter. However, the converted uppercase letter appears in smaller font size than the original uppercase letters in the text. So if I don't make sense, then you can take a look at this one. Over here you can see the font variant is normal. Here, font variant is small caps. My name is Jane Doe. This my name is Jane Doe looks like this. Now let me change this one and show you how normally if you would type out Jane Doe, how it would look. You can see over here it appears much more smaller. It's because we have used font variant small caps. The capital letters appear to be smaller in their original size they appeared to be. Drag and drop the correct values to make the font of the P bold. To do that, the first thing we have to go is with font weight is bold. Font size. The font size property is used to specify the size of the text or font. Being able to manage the text size is very important in web design. You don't want your design to be looking too bad. However, you should not use font size adjustment to make paragraphs look like headings or headings look like paragraphs. Always, we have to use the proper HTML tags for heading and paragraph tags to make it look like a heading and a paragraph, not just use a font size. Absolute sizes, relative sizes. Absolute sizes, or what we call pixels. These offer very fixed and precise control over the font size. XX small, small, medium, large, X large, XX large. These keywords has a predefined set of sizes in the browser. Relative size. AM. This unit is relative to the font size of the parent element. Rem. This unit is relative to the font size of the root HTML element. Percentage. This unit is relative to the font size of the parent element. Smaller and larger. These units adjust the font size relative to their parent element. So the first unit that we're going to use is pixels. You can see over here the paragraph font size is 16 pixels over here. Or if you want to look at it very well, I'm going to remove this heading tag and I'm going to show you. So this is font size. Now the things that you need to remember is that the text is always going to be 16 pixels because I've set the font size to be 16 pixels and it does not depend on any other elements for its size. And it does not scale well with the user preference. You have to remember that. That means that so if you have any preference, like I wanted to look a bit bigger in mobile screen. I wanted to look very smaller in a mobile screen. I wanted to look very bigger in a computer screen. It doesn't do that. It's just fixed. Okay. So yeah. And now we're going to talk about next other things. Okay. So for this, it's just consistent. It doesn't change with however whatever browser settings you got. You got a mobile phone, you got a computer screen, you got a tab, you got all of the laptop or whatever devices or PC or whatever you got. It's gonna stay the same. Okay. Now take a look at these one that's on your screen. Okay. So these are font size. These are also absolute. Okay, they are also absolute. They are like similar to your pixels, and they're also absolute. And another thing that you really want to remember is that over here, these are all predefined sizes that are built in browsers. So it varies from different browser to browser, and the browser will define your exact size. Okay, it's not very much used over here, just to learn, just have a look. But these exist, and in some sites, you can see that they've used X large or XS large, and when you go and check out their um, console, you can see that they've used them. So it just adapts according to the browser. The browser is fixed, and whatever the browser tells is the font size. Okay. Over here, we got this font size in M. When you're using EM, remember that this is relative to the parent element. When I say related to the parent element, is that the font size of the child elements will completely depend on the parent element. Let's take a close look on what do I mean by parent element and the child element. Over here, you can see that there's one parent and there are three childs. The div class is the parent class, and we have three child class. Child text is 1M, 1.5M, and 2M. In this example, you can see the parent element is set to 20 pixels in font size. When I say child 1M, it's going to take the same font size as the parent, 20 into 1. So when I do 20 into 1, I get 20. So this one is the font size of the child 1 class. Now when I take the second paragraph, I do 1.5 into 20 and I get 30. Okay? And when I want to find out this one, it's 2 into 20, which is 40. Now why do I have to use this one over here? So when do we use these m? We use m when building things like button, cards, because these we want all the elements to be stayed relative to the parent element for them to look even, okay? So that we can easily increase the value of the parent element and not worry about the child element values being changed. For example, let's say I want my parent element to be a little bit bigger in their font size, 70 pixels. Then what do I want? I want all of my child to scale equally to the parent element. Now when I give pixels, let's say for example, I've given here 10 pixels when the parent element was 10 pixels as well. When I did this before, and when I suddenly wanted to change my mind, let's go with 50, you can see over here, the child doesn't change. So I want to manually go ahead and change the child as well. Next, we're going to talk about rem. Rem is relative to the root element. So by default, browser root element is 16 pixels. So you can see over here, when I say 2rem, it's 2 into 16, which is 32 pixels. 3 into 16 is 48 pixels. And 4 into 16 is 64 pixels. You can also go ahead and change the root element, which is HTML, font size, I say 10 pixels. You can see over here, it gets automatically adjusted to the browsers, to the root element size. Okay, if you want your web page to be more precise, okay, to be more responsive, then people go with rem. Okay. Now let's talk about percentages. Now these are very similar to the parent element, like we saw in EM. So what did we see there? The parent element will decide the size of the child elements as well. It's kind of related to your parent element. So you can see over here we got a div class parent. Inside of it we got 3 paragraph classes. And you can see the font size is 100% and it'll be pretty much similar to the parent. So it's 20 pixels. When I say 150, divide 150 divided by 100. So when we do 150 and when we go ahead and divide it by 100, we would get 1.5. Multiply that with 20 pixels. When you multiply 1.5 into 20, you get the font size of its second child paragraph element, which is 30 pixels. And then when you do 200%, you get 40 pixels. Next, we're going to be talking about font size larger and smaller. So we got a div class parent and we got 2 child classes inside of it. So for one child, we have given the font size to be larger, and for another one, we gave it to be smaller. So we are given font size to be 20 pixels. Now what does it do? It goes inside this is text. This one is 20 pixels. This one is 20 pixels as well. Now, when we see this paragraph, you can see it's larger than the parent text, and this one is smaller than the parent text. It's not also widely used. In this website, you can go ahead and have a look at this website and have a read of these to understand it better. I hope I made it much more clear. Now we're going to talk about the VW unit, which is the view width. Okay, viewport width. The font size can also be set with VW unit, which is the viewport width. The viewport width unit is a relative unit that represents a percentage of the width of the viewport. One viewport width is equal to 1% of the current width of the browser viewport. So if the viewport is 500 pixels wide, one viewport width is 5 pixels. This way, the text will follow the size of the browser window. Let's go and try it for yourself and see how this works. You can see over here the result size in the width size. You can see over here that it changes according to the viewport. Now I'm going to keep one of the values to be the same. So we're going to have h1 over here, and we're going to give this a class name. Let's give vw viewport, and I'm going to have the same text as well, so that we can have the comparison would be a good comparison. And I'm going to give a class name is equal to normal, and the class is equal to viewport. I'm going to run the program. Oh my god, I didn't specify pixel. Right. You can see over here that this one is getting changed with the viewport, and this one doesn't. You can clearly have the view over here that this appears much more larger than my width is 1015. But when I shrink my window, you can see over here it's at 423, and you can see this size is significantly decreased. But this one is an absolute unit, and that doesn't change when your browser's window changes. So this is the difference between viewport width and absolute value pixels. We're going to see the font size to be 60 pixels.